Hello, everyone. This is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we are going to be talking about big news over at CNN, a big shakeup. Um, Jeff Zucker is resigning over an undisclosed relationship, and it seems to have been it's getting spicier the more I read into it. Obviously, this is like sort of breaking news over today. So, we'll see how much more develops, but seems like to me that this is something that people should have known his relationship for a while. I don't know if he's like officially said to everybody, "Hey, I'm dating this person," um, but it should have been something that everyone was probably aware of because it's been going on for a while. So, and I think there's really more to this because there's connection with the Cuomos. And Chris Cuomo, who was an anchor over at CNN, was let go, of course, because he was helping his brother, who stepped down from being the governor of New York because of sexual assault allegations. And he was trying to help his brother and was working behind the scenes, in some cases, to discredit people who were coming after his brother. So CNN was like, hey, that's inappropriate. But they're very tied together. So I'm sure that Chris actually knows where a lot of bodies are buried, and he is coming for CNN because they let him go, and he wants his 18 million that he says he is owed on his contract. So I think there's so much here to this story. But this is like a developing story. But we are gonna talk about it. Also, Whoopi Goldberg has been suspended from The View for 2 weeks. And we'll see if that's the only slap on the wrist. I don't really expect her to be fired, but we'll see what happens. I'm not sure. But people on the right who don't normally like to cancel people are like, you know what? It's not fair if we're only going to have this standard where you guys come for people that you don't like and want to cancel them, and then your own people only get the slap in the wrist, and we memory hole what they said and what they did that was atrocious. And so people, like, on principle, I just was listening to Ben Shapiro not too long ago. He said, on principle, he doesn't want anybody to get canceled, and he's never called for anyone. He's like, but at the same time, we have to insist on mutually assured destruction so people can see that this mindset that we have about canceling people for any sort of thing um doesn't work, or it shouldn't work. But it's definitely just you bludgeoning someone that you don't like, if it's not applied equally. So but the left wouldn't have any standards if there didn't have double standards. We'll also talk about that. Also, the White House involved in this Spotify situation with Joe Rogan. And Jen Psaki was like good and happy that they're censoring them with like a disclaimer, which Joe Rogan doesn't really care about the disclaimer. And he keeps saying himself, like, don't listen to me. He just wants to prompt people to ask questions. But actually, that is the problem. That is the problem for them. They don't want people to ask questions at all. You are just simply supposed to obey. So that's really the problem with people like Joe Rogan, and that he has a large influence as well, and he has a huge audience, obviously, like 11 million people. And so she believes that social media companies should do more. And President Biden has called for social media companies to do more to stomp out misinformation. But the issue about them stomping out misinformation is that the things that they said were misinformation, a lot of those things started to come around. Now, there's people out there who are saying crazy stuff that didn't end up panning out. But there are times when the White House or the position of Fauci, for example, when they have blatantly lied to people about some of this COVID stuff, for example, with masks. So, if that's the case, how can we have this authoritative government trying to dictate what is and what isn't misinformation, and have those social media companies hold to that standard? I got a strike on YouTube a few weeks ago, maybe like 2, 3 weeks ago, and I couldn't post there for an entire week because they said was I got labeled for misinformation. I did request that they tell me specifically what I said was misinformation, and they wouldn't tell me. But I know my episode was very specific, and the title was calling out the uh Ronald McDonald House in Canada that was making it evicting kids or moving kids rather who weren't vaccinated if you were 5 and up. And so I'm sure that got flagged, and they're like, well, we got to do something about this, and they said misinformation, but they didn't tell me specifically what I said that was even going against the CDC. So we're not in a good place with these social media companies, and I don't think the president of the free world should be in the position where they are trying to stomp out speech. It's just not a good look for America, in my opinion. But that's where we are. So that's what we'll be covering today and talking about today. A lot of like really big social issues, but in pop culture and just kind of juicy tea. But I think those things are important and they're very entertaining. So before we jump into that, I do want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out content that I have on my website. If you would like to support blacktnews.com, you can go to blacktnews.com/donate. I appreciate everything that you guys can do. And if you do like the show, you can throw up a little bit of support, $10, $20, $50, whatever you guys want to do. I very much appreciate. I very much appreciate it when I got donors and sponsors rather to help out with the right to life footage, the March to Life footage. I did a live yesterday on TikTok talking about it for I don't know, it was on for at least an hour, and it was pretty late. And I was telling people how encouraging it was to be out in the real world and seeing so many young people standing up for life, because on that app you can have a lot of young people, and they're from all over the world too, who just say the most absurd toxic things. So I was also like addressing and rebutting some of their talking points as well as I was having this dialogue on TikTok doing a live. But anyway, if you haven't seen that video, you can go look at it. It's on my YouTube channel. It's on my Facebook channel. So please go ahead and share that around. It's like 3 minutes and 15 seconds, something like that. And it's just a good wrap up of that. And I do appreciate everyone who sponsored that. But if you want to continue to help Black Teen News grow, please consider leaving a donation, and I appreciate that. So also please check out different merchandise we have on the site as well. We have the very cool support denounce white supremacy, defeat Joe Biden shirt with a list of his racism on the back. Of course, we got the goat hoodie. We got that in different colors. We do have the I'm not the victim you're looking for. And we do have the Be Better Not Bitter, which I think is important lesson for Black History Month, which it is Black History Month. There's a song, Lift Every Voice and Sing. It came in the news, I guess about last year when the was it the NBA or NFL said that they're gonna have that song before the national anthem or after the national anthem, because it's referred to as the Black national anthem, and yes, people refer to it as that. I've called it that not because I want to start my own like nation and go like Wakanda forever. It's just like a nickname to me, and I think just an affectionate nickname to other people. But I wish that song, it's a beautiful song if you listen to it. I wish people had the attitude of that song, because there's two lines. Sing a song full of it's more than two lines, but there's two that are really important. I want to point out. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has brought us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has taught us. I think, well, the first one is maybe brought and taught. So maybe confuse them a little bit. But the point is that you're taught faith through your experiences, through all that you've persevered through. And then when you look around at the hope of the present, you can look at and see how far we've come and have hope for where we're going. So a lot of Blacktivists today don't have that attitude. They are just so sad and angry all of the time, and it's exhausting. I don't know how people can continue to live like this. It's definitely not good for a country, and we're moving backwards in so many different ways. But we don't have any optimism. Well, the thing that I do like, or always did appreciate growing up, because with Black History Month, when I was in elementary school, we'd have like entire programs about it, and we keep learning about the same like handful of people over and over again. So definitely, I learned more Black history when I got older and out of high school, and was just researching for politics, researching for my books and stuff. But it's an underdog story. And it's not about me like looking at my roots or something all the way back to like Africa. It's about unique American history and these underdogs and how far we've come as a nation. But that's not how people look at these stories today. That's not how people look at the world today. And they just have no appreciation. They only see the tribulation and the trial, but they don't see the testimony. So I don't get it. I don't get it. And it's like I said, it's just a sad way to live. But anyway, that's something I think is important. That message, be better, not bitter, because there's a lot of bitter people in the world. So anyway, you guys can check out the different merchandise I have on blacktnews.com as well. And I will keep saying this since it's Black History Month. You guys know I am a writer, and I do have a historical fiction fantasy series. And I've gotten some people who said that they've ordered it. Some paperbacks, but it's on Kindle as well. It's also on a Kindle Unlimited. So if you have that, you can go ahead and read it. But it's historical fiction fantasy. If you like X-Men and imagine it like in that era with like Harriet Tubman and stuff, that's probably your kind of book. And it's got some good history nuggets in there. The second book has a big section on like the draft riots. It's like kind of the climax area of the book. And there's also other little good nuggets in there. So go ahead and check that. I'm sure you guys will like it. Slay Your Fears, my nonfiction book, that's right behind me. And I also do have a new book that's available for pre-order on Kindle, and that is a YA, so a vampire paranormal romance book. So not political, but if you want to support me, that's one of the things that I do. And I gotta make some money, so I'm gonna talk about it. So that's another way you guys can support. You can, if you want to pre-order it right now on Kindle for $2.99, you can. So that's my spiel. I'm gonna get to the good stuff. Thank you for the sticking through the commercials. So first thing I want to show you guys, the trucker phenomenon. It is spreading. Besides, like in Canada, they're doing the big convoys for freedom, and Trudeau's like hiding, and people are mocking because he's hiding and stuff. But it is spreading and getting around. They're actually going to do one in the U.S. They're arranging one to drive from California to D.C. Actually, Facebook got rid of the Facebook page of the organizers for it. And not only that, they like got rid of the profiles of some of the people. And they said there wasn't like warnings like, hey, take down this post. It was gone. So I don't know if since I have seen that interview last night that Facebook has issued any sort of reason. But it's really crazy to me when Facebook just like is authoritative and just takes stuff down. My dad, he had his Facebook page totally removed about, I guess it was more than a year ago, but it was for no warning, and he never had any sort of violations or anything like that. And he had cooled down talking about politics. So the only thing that we thought could have been possible was he told a story about how he prayed for someone who had some COVID like after effects or something, and then they felt better, or he was telling people to believe that God can heal them. So maybe that's why he got shut down, because no, he had no warning. They didn't explain anything else. We can only speculate because they didn't give a reason. His whole page was gone, and he's been on it for a long time. Had the max amount of friends that you can have, and he's posted a lot of good posts through the years, encouraging posts, and so on. He's not a person who posts like wild conspiracy theories on his page. And like I said, he's a very pro-Trump guy, but we encouraged him to kind of like simmer down a little bit And with that stuff, so he was really more laid back. So it was puzzling, but we didn't get an explanation. He was just gone, and Facebook wouldn't restore it. They said we're not going to restore it. So we invest our time into these companies, and then they make themselves huge with accessing our data and getting all these ads and so on. um and then they turn around and start showing how they feel about us. So I do like these platforms, but I wish obviously they would treat the consumer better, and or at least have some kind of consistency. But anyway, the truckers are continuing on, and I've played you guys this clip of Trudeau before, but I decided to add a little something to it because, well, he deserves it, honestly. He said that they were a fringe group and they had unacceptable views. So I just wanted to remind people, I just posted this on TikTok not too long ago.
Small fringe minority of people who are on their way to Ottawa or who are holding unacceptable views that they're expressing do not represent the views of Canadians who have been there for each other.
I'm sorry, I don't know. I just it froze for a second. Let me try that again. I'll try to play that again for you guys. If we got to do it a third time, we're just gonna let it be if it doesn't work this time.
Small fringe minority of people who are on their way to Ottawa or who are holding unacceptable views that they're expressing do not represent the views of Canadians who have been there for each other.
There we go. That was it. Just wanted to remind people of some controversial, unacceptable views, Mr. Trudeau. People expressing their freedoms or their desire for their freedoms to be able to live their life without the mandates that don't make a lick of sense, really. It'd be different if at this point you knew the mandates were making a significant impact on your life in a positive direction, but we know that's just not the case. So saying that these people who don't want to be needlessly masked and have to test a needless amount when you know people who are vaccinated can also carry, it just doesn't make any sense. So you say that it's a fringe group, which people did not like them calling a fringe group. It just only empowered more people to go out and be part of the convoys, to join the truckers, to go on the streets with their signs rallying, to go to the Capitol and rally by their side. But to say they're unacceptable views, like, what are you just gonna stomp them out? Is that what you're gonna do? If the tide wasn't turning, if it was small enough, if it really was fringe, I think they would just stomp them out, but they can't because it's not fringe. And there's a lot of people who are saying enough is enough. I see so many people on TikTok, they're like, man, the Canadians are more American than America right now. They joke, but Godspeed to them, and we'll see what happens as they start doing that in the US. But I don't know, it doesn't seem like Biden can take his head out of his butt. So the way they're persisting is just really troubling. But let's move on to this Zucker story. So if you guys don't know who Zucker is the president of CNN. And so he's actually resigning, or has resigned rather, as the BBC is reporting. So, and he's doing so because he didn't disclose a particular relationship that he had. So they said CNN president Jeff Zucker has resigned from the network after failing to disclose a romantic relationship with a senior executive. The 56-year-old Mr. Zucker said in a memo to colleagues that he was wrong to not report the relationship as required. The relationship was discovered during an investigation into the conduct of fired CNN anchor Chris Cuomo. So there's more to say, but I think that's pretty juicy, I think. And he's had this relationship for a minute. So I would say that people in details, because Katie Couric wrote about this, or her speculations about it, sometime in a memoir not too long ago. So I gotta say, people must know. So there's more to this story. There's got to be more to this story, and people are going through it. But if you recall, Chris Cuomo was fired not too long ago because he was helping his brother behind the scenes, which CNN knew he was helping his brother, but they were like, well, you're doing it more than you told us you were. Which I don't believe that they really didn't know, no, but they decided to get rid of him. And so Chris Cuomo is suing CNN because and trying to go after 18 million from his contract. And CNN was like, we can fire people if they do inappropriate things. So there's like a morality clause or whatever they have at CNN, which there's other people that they could have fired for doing some shady stuff, like Tubin, who got caught pleasuring himself on a Zoom call. So I wonder if they'll bring that up in court for an argument, but they decided to get rid of Cuomo. And so Cuomo knows probably where a lot of dead bodies are, where the skeletons in the closet are. So I wonder why that had to come out in that investigation, because I'm sure people had to know, and we'll get to why I believe people had to know. So it says Mr. Zucker is considered one of the most powerful media executives in the US. In the message sent on Wednesday to the network staff and shared online by CNN media correspondent Brian Stelter, Mr. Zucker said that he was asked about his consensual relationship with a colleague during an investigation into Mr. Cuomo's time at CNN. Mr. Cuomo was being investigated over efforts to help his let me stop right there. So he was asked about it during this investigation. Probably because it's not because they probably didn't know. It's probably because this is really relevant, because we're going after a big anchor that they have, who's the brother of someone who was the governor of New York. And if we're talking about inappropriate sexual sort of stuff there, it's probably relevant that we got to talk to you about this thing going on with the colleague. And this is not like a male person that he had a relationship with. And we'll get deeper into it. But I, like I said, I think there's juice here. I think there's tea. Mr. Cuomo was being investigated over efforts to help his politician brother, former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, fight allegations of sexual harassment. Mr. Zucker said that he had worked with the colleague for 2 decades and that the relationship had evolved in recent years. I was required to disclose it when it began, but I didn't, he said. I was wrong. As a result, I am resigning today. Just that simple, huh? Just that simple. Mr. Zucker's memo did not identify the colleague with whom he had a relationship, but CNN named Allison Gollust, I think that's how you say it, the network's executive vice president and chief marketing officer. So that's a pretty big role. People are speculating because she's staying at the company. So if he steps down, he has resigned, but it is possible they could offer this job to her. Maybe she would take it, maybe she wouldn't. So this is just a speculation right now, and maybe they wouldn't give it to her because obviously she's involved in this situation. So that would be inappropriate if that ended up being the case. But this, like I said, this isn't a mailroom person. This is someone who, what is the vice president and chief marketing officer. So Jeff and I have been close friends and professional partners for over 20 years, she said in a statement quoted by Mr. Stelter on air. Recently, our relationship changed during COVID. I regret that we didn't disclose it at the right time. Mrs. Gollust added that she intends to stay at the network. Both her and Mr. Zucker are divorced, the New York Times reported. Mr. Zucker also resigned as chairman of Warner Media's News and Sports division. He had joined CNN in 2013 after a stint at the head of NBC Universal. So, what's really juicy about this, Katie Couric wrote about this a bit in her in a memoir some time ago. So well in her last book, I will put it that way. It was just her last book that she wrote something about Cuomo regarding all this. So she said it was a little weird with the Today Show. I just kind of came on and people responded. Here, there was a product testing and it didn't feel organic. At a certain point, Jeff made a huge push to bring Allison Gollust on. So we're talking about Zucker and we're talking about Allison when he was at ABC working with Katie Couric. So he was trying to bring her on there at the time, this person that he's just recently developed a relationship with. When we worked together at NBC, she and Jeff cooked up even bolder ways to draw attention to Today. I think I said ABC, but I'm sorry, NBC. So when we worked together at NBC, she and Jeff cooked up even bolder ways to draw attention to Today, and later Jeff himself when he moved to entertainment. They were joined at the hip. The problem was we'd already hired a PR person for the show. There really wasn't a role for Allison. Jeff asked me to meet with her anyway. One weekend, when I was out at the Hamptons, I went over to her house and told her what I'd already told Jeff, that we had the communications piece of it covered and there wasn't a role there, wasn't a job there. What we needed were talented producers. ABC was paying Jeff and me a ton of money. And also was the EP of the show, and my name was on it. I felt a certain responsibility to spend the money wisely and have some real agency in the decision making. I had to wonder why Jeff was angling so hard to bring Allison on board. She and her husband and kids had moved into the apartment right above Jeff and Karen's. That's weird. That's weird, in my opinion. I just think it's a little weird, in my opinion. You guys can let me know if you think it's a little weird, okay? Everyone who heard about the cozy arrangement thought it was super strange. By that point, Karen had become a close friend, and it made me really uncomfortable. I don't want to force myself on you, Allison said reasonably that day in the Hamptons. She seemed disappointed, but that was the end of it. Sort of, not really. Okay. Anne Sweeney had lost all confidence in Jeff one afternoon. After we finished taping, he poked his head into the makeup room. They fired me, he said. I was pissed, both at Anne for not giving me the heads up and at Jeff for having one foot out the door. He called me a couple weeks later. Will you do me a favor? He said, sounding uncharacteristically needy. Will you call Jeff Bukas, the CEO of Time Warner? I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong. And put in a good word for me at CNN. This is really my last chance to have a big job like this. And of course, if you want it, there will be a job for you too. In those 8 seconds while we waited for my answer, our time together flashed before my eyes. The excitement and fun, the teamwork, the unstoppable ascent. Yes, he had been a huge disappointment. But in spite of everything, we'd been through so much together. I also knew news had always been his sweet spot, and CNN would be a much better fit. Of course I would, I told him. On November 29th, Jeff was named president of CNN. His first hire, Allison Gollust. Oh, and I never did hear from him about that job. So he never even returned that favor. So that's messed up. But that's interesting though, right? So they've been following together, joined to the hip for a while. He tried to get her in a NBC, didn't work out, and then he got her over at CNN. And when he did divorce his wife, she had divorced her husband not too long before that. So that's, I think that's interesting. That's interesting. I think that's some juicy bit of tea. So I really, really think that there's more to it than that. And by the way, she used to be the communications director for Andrew Cuomo. So so there's also a connection there. So which also maybe explains why they're so cushy and understanding to Chris as all this was going on. Why they were trying to make Andrew seem like he was the best governor in America in 2020 when obviously that wasn't the case. But perhaps they felt obligated to do that, and they're all pretty tight. So I wonder how many bodies that Chris has buried as they go through this lawsuit, and what all it may end up revealing, and if that's why Jeff felt like he had to step down, because I really can't see them not knowing about this relationship. They're living on top of each other even when they were married. It wasn't too long after he got divorced that she got divorced and he got divorced. And she was his first hire, according to Katie anyway, over at CNN. And it's not like he gave her a small job. So CNN has had a lot of sort of sexual scandals. Actually, we went through it a few weeks ago. We had an episode pretty much dedicated to CNN and some of their sexual scandals as of late. Far more insidious than this. This is just interesting tea. Other stuff that we covered was criminal, actually. But this is a consensual relationship. Some people would say that it's not appropriate because they're colleagues, but they've been together for a while, and I'm sure other people knew. So them saying I didn't disclose it, so I'm going to step down. Granted, he could have disclosed it and should have disclosed it, and perhaps people would be like, it's in your contract, you have to disclose it, etc. But to just be like, yeah, I should have disclosed it, I didn't, and I'm stepping down, that seems like a really easy way out. Or a really too simple of a way to get out with someone with his pedigree. So there's definitely more to it than that. And I don't know how much of it is protecting himself or the network protecting themselves as they go up against Chris Cuomo and his lawsuit and his pursuit for $18 million and perhaps more. And Chris did hire himself reportedly a pretty good lawyer to take on this case. So it's really interesting that they did decide to terminate Andrew Cuomo, and which led to CNN and the relationship with Chris Cuomo, and now Zucker is stepping down. So in my opinion, and I've said this several times, I thought they took down Andrew Cuomo not so much because of his sexual assault allegations, but also because of the nursing home scandal. And they didn't want to talk about it, and there were reports about, obviously, they undercounted the numbers, they undercounted them on purpose, they tried to cover it up, and he was very mean during he was very mean. They're like, oh, he's such a good governor. I'm like, watching press conferences, he's mean to people, saying, if you want a job, be an essential worker, you won't kill anyone. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's not how it works, Chris. Andrew. But he was threatening people, he was mean to people on his side. So he had people who had political aspirations under him who wanted him to go down. So granted, that's a part of it, but I feel that his what he did was drawing too much attention, especially to governors who did similar things, like my governor in Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer. Newsom did it as well. So there's 5 in total, all Democrat, who had similar nursing home policies. And as people were talking about him, people were starting talking about other governors as well. So I think politically he needed to go down. There are people willing to take him out. He had made enough enemies, even on his camp. And so I think once Democrats decide that they are done with you, they are going to burn you. And and they burned him. That's why I don't think that they're totally done with Hillary Clinton, because they'd never really burned the Clintons, by the way. So people talking about her giving a serious run for president, I don't think that's so far fetched, by the way. My only big reason why I'm like, I don't know, my hesitancy with that actually coming to fruition is because she is old as well. She is old as well, and I think after people stumble through Biden for the next 3 years, they'll be like, this is probably overall not a good idea to have presidents this old. I think that is probably the biggest hurdle for Trump coming back into office in 2024. As much as people love him, people are going to have this question like, okay, he seems okay, but he is younger than Joe. But the bell tolls for us all eventually. People get older and stuff happens. So I think that's probably going to be a big reason why Hillary maybe doesn't go through with it. But I think they're definitely open to it. And they, like I said, they never really burned the Clintons, even though after Epstein, and there was pictures with him with some of Epstein's like sex slaves, like having massages and stuff. They had the weird painting with him in the blue dress. Even after that, they still had to speak at the DNC convention, which blew my mind. And it blew my mind that people just kind of ignored it. And I'm like, what happened to the Me Too movement? Is there just like no legitimacy in this entire conversation? I guess not. Now he's doing master classes and she's doing master classes. So I really think they are trying to rehabilitate her. But again, I think her age is a huge hurdle. So anyway, that is the CNN news, and we will see. Someone said no accountability for the Clintons. That is true. That is absolutely true. We'll see where that goes. So let's move on to the Whoopi Goldberg case. So she was on The View, and of course we've talked about this week, and it's been everywhere. So I'm sure you guys know she was on The View, and they had a conversation that was sparked after the book Moss was removed from the reading list for an 8th grade class, I believe it was, because of nudity and swearing, and people didn't think that was appropriate. And now it's like a number 1 on Amazon because people went out to get it and read it. But anyway, it sparked conversation, and Whoopi was like, the Holocaust isn't about race. And at first they're kind of like, what? You're like, no, it's not. And they're like, wait, what? Yes, huh? And so Joy and all the other panelists were like pushing back on her, and she was just like, it's not about race. It's about man's inhumanity to man. And so and we talked about people's commentary. Like Ben was like, people want to see white Jews as white people so they can because then they don't have to be on the intersectional hierarchy. It's just anti-Semitism. And I didn't know if I wanted to personally attribute that much malice to Whoopi, or if it was just like pure stupidity and ignorance. I told my mom while we were at dinner the other day, and she just was like, that is so ignorant. But there are some people who just see race as they identify you as your color, and if you are not dark enough, then they just lump you into white. When we were in high school, my high school, half my career was like in an urban sort of area, inner city, and then I ended up moving up to like a rural place. And I was a bit of a chocolate drop in my high school, in middle school. So there's only like a handful of Black kids in my graduating class. But anyway, my older sister, she was told by another Black girl who's darker than her. She said she didn't really consider her to be Black. And my sister Katrina, she's a little darker than I am. So that was pretty wild. But if you don't like match the proper shade, some people will just like discount you, I suppose. So maybe that is where Whoopi, that sort of ignorant sort of thinking is where Whoopi is sort of coming from, was she won't identify you as a race at all. You're just either you're Black or you're a colored person, or you're a white person. And she did issue a statement, and the statement came out after her time on Colbert, but she probably filmed the Colbert before that. And man, oh man, her Colbert interview didn't do her any favors. And we talked about that yesterday, so I'm not going to go totally back into it today. But she doubled down. People are like, she apologized. She apologized. She doubled down, and she was like, I see you guys are upset. You don't have to write me anymore. I get that you're upset, and I'm not going to talk about it anymore. That's what it was. But the doubling down, because she did go on the View the next day and say they are a race, because the Nazis wanted to recognize them as a race, and Hitler recognized them as a race, and he wanted to exterminate them. But also, when she was on Colbert, he was like, he told her that the Nazis saw them, the Jews, as a race, and that he wanted to exterminate them. He wanted to create a superior master race. And so she's like, well, here's the thing about the Nazis. They lied. And it's so she was just so set on this worldview that she would say the Nazis lied about their real motivation, and it wasn't about race, it was just about man's inhumanity to man. Which you can say that is just so broad and basic of a critique about it. This isn't about race, it's about man's inhumanity. Man, can't you say that about all racism? Can't you say that about murder? Can't you say that about robbery? Can't you say that about abortion? Can't you say it about every, like, censorship and, like, man's inhumanity to man? Like, that's so simplistic, so and so broad. But if you're going to get to, like, more specific reasons, how do you justify that inhumanity about man to man? You know? They justify it by being racist. So it was really bizarre. And she said, I don't want to give an insincere apology. Like, I believe that she's, like, sorry for some of the responses that she's getting, have gotten, because people were really upset about it. And I imagine why some of it was probably very ranged from very sad to very hysterical to very angry. And so she also talked about how people were calling her anti-Semitic and racist and stuff. And she's like, and I'm not those things. And I'm like, well, man, they call people on the right racist and attribute so much motive to them. So I would hope this would be a situation where she can reflect. But to me, it doesn't appear that that is necessarily the case. So they did put her on a 2-week suspension, but it seems more like that is right now a PR move, and perhaps we'll all go back to not thinking about it in 2 weeks time and leave it just at that. um but if they don't plan to do anything, Disney owns ABC is Disney, and Disney has gone after a lot of people. And Gina Carano has been trending today because people recall Gina Carano. She was on The Mandalorian, which is on Disney Plus. Gina was originally a female, MMA fighter, and she got into movies, and so she was one of the favorite characters on the show The Mandalorian. And so she got booted off the show because she's a conservative, because she holds conservative views. She didn't say anything super controversial, but Disney did go out of its way to misconstrue what she said to justify them getting rid of Gina. So originally what set them off was the pronoun police were like, what are your pronouns? What are your pronouns? And so she said beep, bop, boop. Of course, that offended some people. And so Disney got back with her and they're like, we need you to, like, apologize. We need you to. And she's like, I can apologize, but I'm not going to make an insincere apology. So I just want to explain where I'm coming from. And she's like, I'm not trying to go after the trans community or anything like that, but she doesn't like the people trying to force you to comply with what they're trying to make you say. And so and even as she started talking to Disney reps about it, and their PR people and their LGBT specialists about these things. I wonder how many specialists they have on the payroll, by the way, who think like us, who are kind of more conservative minded, traditional minded, or something like that, or trying to keep into, like, religious values, or like a traditional sort of, uh, it doesn't even have to be Christian, just kind of more a traditional sort of worldview. And I'm not saying Disney needs to have that, but they have all these other sort of specialists on staff to push that sort of agenda forward. So I've said this before. I think it's interesting, who can speak and then they'll move for, but they'll see outrage about something else when Disney's like, ah. So anyway, they even told Gina like, well, your issue, your problem is you're trying to give a logical reason, and people are like emotionally upset about this, and she's like, how come I can't have a logical answer? And so what they wanted to do was have Gina go on a like a blog, we'll do like a Zoom call with like 20 LGBT people. And to her that sounded like a setup. And she's like, how about this? How about I take out a couple of them out to dinner, and they can look into my eyes, and I can look in their eyes, and we can have a conversation. And Disney didn't like that. So they're like, nope. And that was basically the last contact she pretty much had with like a Lucasfilm, which is owned by Disney. And so she would tweet a couple things here and there about, sort of conservative worldviews about mask and so on, just kind of commentary that people were saying that you can probably, your average kind of person on the right would tweet, but not like super often, I don't think. And so eventually she made a post that was referencing the Holocaust, not people wearing stars like some people do or something like that. It was just about neighbors ratting out neighbors, and the conditioning of neighbors ratting out people in that regard. So there's a lot of people out there, if you say any sort of reference to the Holocaust, they don't like it at all. It's just, they just feel like it should be totally off topic, off limits. And she had a conversation with Ben Shapiro and other people, and they understand and they get that, but in no way what she said was anti-Semitic. Yet that's how Lucasfilm like framed it. And they're like, well, we don't have any plans to work with Gina in the future. Like, she's not employed, blah, blah, blah. And at this point in time, she hadn't been doing press, and they hadn't had any contact. So I don't know if she was like extraordinarily worried about her future anyway. But that was like their out. I think they were looking for an out because they didn't even represent her position or her post accurately. And then they said she was trying to disparage the Jewish community, and in no way was her tweet anything along those lines. I've to go into more detail, I've done videos about Gina's situation specifically, and I had one video where I did like the top 5 takeaways, and my number one, just spoiler alert, it's a good video, should still go back and watch it. But number one takeaway from that whole situation is that Gina was just getting into politics. Like, she's like, oh, election's coming up, let me get a little more informed. She started like listening to people like maybe Ben and other stuff, and picking up some stuff. And I don't know what her upbringing was to kind of like root conservative values in her, but she was trying to figure herself out. And so in the midst of her expressing herself and trying to figure herself out, the left decided to cancel her rather than have a conversation and try to convert her. So now she's like doing stuff with the Daily Wire, and is probably pretty hard right. So when you are so forceful to cram your worldview and not even have a conversation, but you just want to bludgeon people over the head, and if they don't comply, you're going to just get rid of them. There's so many people out here probably being red pilled. Maybe not everybody's going to talk about it. There's definitely a lot of people talking about it though. Definitely a lot of people talking about it. But I wonder how bad it's going to be. And not because Republicans are suddenly look so much like the better option, like they've been, campaigning and making a different pitch. No, people still, there's a lot of people who still like don't even really like them, but they will, I've heard people say that they will vote straight party Republican in the next election, because something has to be done about these lockdown measures and the top down authoritative governing that we've had under Biden, that they don't want to end, that they keep justifying, even though there hasn't been any sort of real data that this, in the end, that how we have governed was the right way to do so. And even though things clearly don't make sense, they still want to push forward with it anyway. And it's not logical, but they still want to do it. So this whole situation is red pilling a lot of people, and their response to Gina upset a lot of people. But what they did was push Gina as well. So I don't know how hard right she was before, but now she's working with the Daily Wire. So you guys made a mistake. It was a pretty big mistake, guys. A pretty significant mistake. So Gina was let go. So people are bringing up that Gina was fired how come Whoopi still is going to have her job after saying something that was worse than what Gina said? Gina didn't say anything bad. Everybody agrees Whoopi said a bad thing. Is it a fireable offense? Again, people who would not normally advocate for cancel culture are like, you know what? But you can't have rules for you and different rules for us, because that's just a big difference of power that obviously is no benefit to us and ultimately no benefit to society, unless we have mutually assured destruction right now. You're not gonna turn the tide, because as long as you are going after people who you in your mind think of as Nazis or racists or bigots or whatever, and you paint them as the villains and yourself as the self-righteous hero, you always rationalize taking them down. So what your standards are, like, we got to apply them to you. So now in the situation, how can you just put Whoopi on a 2-week suspension and not get rid of her altogether? Because people have said way less offensive things than Whoopi Goldberg. Now, I'm not saying that even I feel that way, but I understand that perspective. I understand that. And people were upset when they announced that she was suspended, like, "Oh no, she apologized. She apologized ish, because she sure did double down. She sure did double down." And people were also bringing up Roseanne. People were bringing up Roseanne. That was the number one show. Number one show. So she said that Valerie Jarrett looked like someone from the Planet of the Apes. And so she got into hot water. Now, she said she didn't even really know the race of her anyway, and she didn't mean anything racist by it. And I'll let you guys Google that person, and then Google the female from the original Planet of the Apes. Not the original, but the one that Tim Burton did. And you can make your own judgments and your own assessments. But people went after Roseanne, and they took her off the air for that. They killed her character off of her show called Roseanne. And then they made the Connors. And it was like from a drug overdose. So, saying is what she did worse, especially, is that worse than what Whoopi did? If it's somewhere in the same realm, 2 weeks, how's 2 weeks gonna cut? They immediately got rid of Roseanne. They immediately got rid of Roseanne. Immediately. So people are bringing up Roseanne. People bring up Gina. People are bringing up Once Upon a Time, when if you look at Megyn Kelly, when she was let go for saying people basically the Joy on The View, when she was young, she did blackface, like she got some bronzer and she dressed up like someone she admired, but she was who was black. And Raven Simone was on The View at the time. She's like, "Did you darken your skin?" She's like, "I just wore some bronzer and made myself a little darker." And she had an afro. And Kim Klacik called her out when she was on the show, called her blackface. She's like, "The black community had my back when I did that." Perhaps they did. Perhaps they did. But what Megyn Kelly described was a situation where someone is like admiring someone and they dress up, and that got her canned on the show that she had. So people have been canceling left and right over things that on an equal sort of level should get Whoopi fired. And I'm not saying that I personally want that, but I do understand the pitch for mutually assured destruction. I absolutely do. So we'll see what happens on that front. We will see what happens on that front. But what I do want to talk about Joe Rogan again, and Jen Psaki being the mouthpiece of the White House. And they're talking about making platforms or advocating that platforms do more to fight misinformation. And of course, what's misinformation? Because we've actually had these elected officials blatantly lie to us at certain points of times about COVID. So here's Jen Psaki asked about Rogan's show, because they did decide to put a disclaimer on it, which Joe Rogan is like, fine, put a disclaimer on it. He didn't care. And he does his own disclaimer. He says, don't listen to me. I'm just an ape. I'm just an ape. Sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong. But Joe Rogan's just someone who wants to have discussions from people all across the aisle. On different issues. People have like the most randomest conversations as he's on a show smoking pot with people. Joe Rogan, there'd be such a range of things. I can imagine if I was on a show talking about stuff, we'd probably talk about politics. He'd probably grill me on religion for a while. He'd probably grill me on why I've never had pot before. And I imagine that'd be probably a very weird segment and stuff on the show. Like, but there's such a range of issues that people talk about on his show, and people acting like, Joe is so dangerous is just crazy. But he is dangerous because he asks questions, and he's a critical thinker. He's inquisitive, and people he's like, it's not a gateway drug to being a Nazi. It's not a gateway drug to being alt-right or just being on the right. It's just a gateway a gateway drug to people just thinking and asking questions and looking up their own research and data and Googling stuff themselves. And that's what they don't like at the White House. That's what they don't like about on CNN, about Joe Rogan, and all these networks are criticizing them, because they just want you to shut up and do what they say. You thinking for yourself is a bad thing, according to these people. So anyway, here's Jen Psaki talking about
it. So this disclaimer, it's a positive step, but we want every platform to continue doing more to call out mis and disinformation, while also uplifting accurate information. I mean, look at the facts, right? You are 16 times more likely to be hospitalized if you're unvaccinated, and 68 times more likely to die than someone who is boosted if you're unvaccinated. That's pretty significant, and we think that is something that unquestionably should be the basis of how people are communicating about it. But ultimately, our view is it's a good step, it's a positive step, but there's more that can be done.
Yeah, so that's the only way they want to just phrase it. It's just, you're this many times more likely to be safe if you have it, if you're, compared to unvaccinated. But what about people who already have been naturally infected with COVID and have recovered? Because about 2 weeks ago, I guess, was it 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, that there was a report, and Wall Street Journal was reporting on it, New York Times was reporting on it, all kinds of outlets, that they did discover that if you were naturally infected with COVID and you did recover, that you were more protected than if you were vaccinated. Now, the most unprotected person is still the person who's never had it introduced into your body. You could still make the case that, you'd have to go talk to your doctor and see if that's what you want to do. But fear-mongering people, and as if they're just, you could talk about how much better it would be if they got vaccinated, but so many people are terrified unnecessarily. I saw a news report about parents who have children under 5, and they feel like they have been left behind by society because their kids can't get vaccinated. And they talk about the fear when there's an outbreak at the preschool and their kid has to quarantine and all this other kind of stuff. And that people with kids under 2, if they're 2 years old, their whole life has been this pandemic, and they're concerned for their kids. But what's amazing about that is that like ages 1 to 4, I don't know if I still have this graph in here. Let me look really quick, load it up. But if you were, I think the last time I had this data that I looked at it from the CDC was November, but between the ages 1 through 4 with people with COVID who have died, I think the number was 68. And then in the whole United States, the entire start of the pandemic. So if you have a child, and if you are just scared to death that they are going to die if they do not have the vaccine, they are more protected than you older person who have the vaccine. Your kids are okay. And I'm not saying they can't die, but from that or anything, but it's a heck of a lot more likely that they will die of something else than COVID. It's more likely that they will die from being suffocated. No, I don't have that the CDC graph, but I'm pretty sure the number was 68 at that point in time when I looked at it. It could have obviously gone up since then, but we're talking about the whole pandemic, and as of November, the number was like 68 at the ages 1 through 4. So if you are living in a hysterical world and in terrible fear for your child because they did not approve vaccines for ages, 5 and under, or under, well, I guess 1 through 4, you're not living in reality. And I understand that you were made to feel this way because of the White House and other people, but you're still not living in reality. There's no data that bears it out. And you yourself could have gone to the CDC and tried to get some perspective. Okay, Jen Psaki saying you're 16 times or whatever the numbers were more protected if you get the vaccine. Okay, but if you're talking about in a scenario where Omicron is like, I know people who've told me that they've had it and they had like scratchy sore throat and sick few days and they're okay. So this is a very light version compared to what we've dealt with. So you can say those numbers and you can present them in a certain way, but we know that you are trying to build a certain narrative and keep people from having some kind of perspective. Some kind of healthy perspective. We made the world crazy. These parents concerned about their 4-year-olds or 3-year-olds or 2-year-olds screaming, you have to get vaccinated because my kid who's 3 can't get vaccinated. Your kid is fine. Your kid is fine. Again, I've showed this graph many times. You're more likely to die from drowning, car accidents, homicide, cancer, cardiovascular disease, flu, definitely flu, suffocation than you are from COVID. And that graph is a little old, but it still rings true. It still rings true. It was nutty watching that video and those parents' reactions. I'm just like, this is so sad that you come into this world, you have your child, you're a new mother. Can you imagine that start like at some point in time in 2020, and you're like, well, maybe this will pass, this will be okay, and you're still scared and you're still afraid, and there's just no data to support it, but that is what you were told to believe, so you still believe it. Because not everybody looks up this stuff all the time. Not even everybody watches the news, but you may go on social media here and there, and whatever bubble you have that your algorithm picks up, they're telling you to be hysterical. And so you have imparted yourself with that. Man, when they said they were going to start having trials for, I think, 4 or allow people younger to get it, under 12, I was on TikTok and someone was like, I'm so scared for my kid. I'm thinking about putting them in a trial so they can have the vaccine. Well, I got news for y'all. Y'all kind of in a trial, to be honest. Everybody's being experimented on. But that was insane to me. Why would you do that other than like I don't know, maybe you love humanity so much that you're willing to do that with your kid, I guess, to make sure it's going to be okay for everyone else, but that's not what it was. It's they are afraid, so they're willing to have their child be a guinea pig over something that's not going to likely take their kid out. So the White House is about control, they're about fear, and I think it is so funny that they were so mad. This is what really triggered people. Because Joe Rogan had all kinds of people on the show. They were mad about the ivermectin because they were mad that he had it and he survived and he recovered because they really want people to take the vaccine. They don't want, they go after other sort of treatments that people have had and other sort of solutions that people have named. So they're really mad at him for that, but they were really mad that they had Dr. Malone on. And Dr. Malone said a lot of different things about risks versus rewards of taking it. He said all sorts of things about censorship, and he talked about women and their periods being messed up, all sorts of stuff, which I thought it was interesting timing. They did, after that interview, which obviously got millions of eyeballs on it, they did admit that women's periods are affected by the vaccine. But they're like, it's not that much, but it's true. I'm like, oh, but this was a conspiracy before. This was misinformation before, right? But now you guys are admitting it. But the thing that they hated the most about that podcast was him talking about mass formation psychosis. That's what they decided to fact check on. That's what they were upset about. That's what they named in the 200 or 300, whatever amount of doctors came together or experts came to condemn Joe Rogan in his show and wanted Spotify to do something to him off the air or whatnot. Because he's talked, that's the main thing they talked about in their letter, the mass formation psychosis. And what's puzzling to me is that they clearly want to shut down opposition and want people to believe one thing. So the more you try to shut down people like him, or if I got a TikTok of mine, I was reporting on it, got taken down. So the more you guys shut people down, any sort of dissent, you are just making the case that you want the population to be focused and to believe this particular narrative. The more that you talk about it, how's it deniable at this point? It's like you're standing. We've peeled back the curtain, and you're the Wizard of Oz, just being like, Don't look here. I'm still the great and powerful Oz, even though the jig is up. And they're trying you so hard to keep you from saying what you're seeing. You're like the emperor with no clothes. But if you're the little boy who's like, don't you know that you're naked? They'll be like, kill this kid. That's what it's like. If it's wrong information, just debunk it. They had an expert on Joe Rogan's show who corrected something that he said that was untrue. And Joe Rogan's like, yeah, that's, thank you. I was wrong. He posted like, hey, I was wrong. This is right. Once you just start, there's a saying like if you cut out a man's tongue, and I guess I'm going to kind of just paraphrase it because I don't know exact, but if you cut out a man's tongue, that doesn't say that the man was lying. It's just that you were afraid of what he was going to say. So if people are wrong and they're spreading misinformation, just combat that. Give accurate information. But people don't like Joe Rogan and they're afraid of Joe Rogan because Joe Rogan wants you to just kind of think for yourself. And that is a crime. That's why they were mad at Nicki Minaj, who did not say don't take the vaccine. She said she was going to pray. She said pray about it. She said herself personally was probably going to take it because she wants to go on tour. And she was someone who hadn't really been at the house. She has a baby herself, and so I'm sure she's concerned about, a little scary about stuff going on with the COVID. And so she hasn't really been anywhere. But she said she planned to tour, so she'll probably take the vaccine. And they came down so hard on her. And you can think what she said about the testicle thing was silly, though people did report some stuff in the VAER. So just so you know, it's maybe not totally out there. The story did sound fishy, but just in general, if you recall, and I did like a whole week on Nicki Minaj, so I'm not going to go into it all, to everything. But Joy Reid came for her. All these people came for her. And she went on her Instagram and talked about how scary this was, how crazy it was. And she said there's other people who think like her, other artists who think like her, but they don't want to say anything. But they want to come for her. And she's not someone who just backs down like that normally. So they were messing with the wrong one. They're messing with the wrong one. But there's other people who have just stood up. They're mad at Evangeline Lilly, who went to DC for that mandate lockdown protest. And she said, I don't want people to be forced to take this stuff. She's like, I believe in the right to choose. That's what she said. And people were calling for her to be fired from playing the Wasp, a comic book character. Also Disney, ABC. Old Disney, not ABC, but Disney owns Marvel. Isn't it crazy that there's like just a handful of companies that own like everything? We need more stuff to pop up. We need more entrepreneurs, more creatives putting stuff out in the world. What I'm trying to do, other people are trying to do. Eric July, he's with the Blaze, but he's a libertarian, a Black libertarian. He talks a lot about pop culture stuff, but trashing comic books and the state of comic books all the time. He's starting his own comic book company, and I think he just got his proof. And if it all looks good, I think Monday his stuff's going to hit the printer. And I haven't really read comic books in a minute because I haven't liked where they've gone for a while, and they're really bad right now with the social justice stuff. But I'm curious to see what he does, and I think we should support new content as it comes up in new content creators, because these big companies, they have their allegiances, and they all push particular narratives, and they're not on your side. They're not on your side. It was easy for them to get rid of Gina. Would they get rid of Whoopi? And you know what Whoopi said was bad, but Whoopi's been saying crazy stuff for the past couple weeks. When it was brought up with the bill for the voting rights, she said our rights are being attacked, and it's like we're living still, the things haven't changed since the Emancipation Proclamation. A multimillionaire sitting up on The View and has been on The View for years is an EGOT person. That's, when you have like the Oscar, Emmy, Tony, and Grammy. She has all that stuff. Very accomplished woman, and is sitting there saying that things haven't changed since the Emancipation Proclamation. We weren't even free when the Emancipation Proclamation. Not everybody. That was before they signed. Women couldn't even vote back then. The war was still going on. That is crazy, but she said it regardless. So people need to remember that just because they have celebrities on a show talking about politics doesn't mean that they know what they're talking about. So maybe ABC needs to evaluate about why they have these certain people on the show talking, and if they are saying things that make sense and are worth continuing. But again, I do understand the mutually assured destruction route. I do. But I do think it is inappropriate that they are so inconsistent, but with who they are willing to cancel. And then the left will say it's not cancel culture, it's accountability culture. That's what they'll say. That's how they'll justify getting rid of Gina Carano, who didn't say anything about that was anything inappropriate or anything that was disparaging the Jewish community. But Disney was bold enough to lie and mischaracterize her tweets or her Instagram post or social media post to get rid of her. And they were looking for an excuse to get rid of her because, again, she wasn't doing any press. They hadn't, according to her, they hadn't really contacted her since the pronoun thing. I knew, isn't The Bachelor on ABC? When they got rid of Chris Harrison, the host of The Bachelor, who's been with them for a long time, I was like, they could go after anybody, man. They could go after anyone. Because that was wild, and they were mad at him. If you didn't follow that story, I wrote about on blackteennews.com too. There was a young woman who went to like an antebellum party, and she's dating the first black bachelor, which people didn't care for him too much because they thought he was Republican, and maybe he is, but people that weren't too fond of him. And so they found out he was going to pick this girl, and they found out that she used to go to antebellum parties. So they were calling her racist and all this kind of other stuff. And then they dug into other stuff and were like, oh, it looks like she's a Trump supporter, a Republican or something like that. So they make all these sort of allegations about this girl. And Chris Harrison said, why don't we have some grace? And Rachel Lindsay, who was a black bachelorette, she was having a conversation with Chris, and he probably thought he was just having a normal conversation. But if you go and listen to her other interviews with her talking about what she did, she was trying to set him up and was like asking questions, kind of baiting him into ways where she thought he would get in trouble. And I still didn't think he said anything controversial. I understand why some people would think was offensive. I didn't think he said anything that was controversial. And she was all so upset herself and internalized all this anger that I felt was undeserved. And I've done a video about this too. You can go back and watch it as we go down memory lane. But he ended up being suspended. And then he was suspended, and then he even kind of went into like a a tour of a re-education camp, I suppose you could say. And he said he was being counseled by Michael Eric Dyson. And you guys don't know I don't like Michael Eric Dyson. He's a guy who said that recently that Winsome Sears, that's who's the lieutenant governor of Virginia now, wonderful, accomplished Black woman, said that it's a blackface moving, but white ideals are coming out. So it's white supremacy through ventriloquism, and that's not the first time he said that. It's really not original. He said that about Kanye West, and he said that about other people as well. So, and he said worse stuff about Clarence Thomas. So that's the kind of person that these people will go to get counseled, and that still wasn't enough, and they got rid of him. And he got, I'm sure, a cushy payout, but you know where these people stand. All for this ideology. They'll do anything for the ideology. So what do you do when Whoopi Goldberg's like, no, it wasn't about race, and the Nazis were lying, you know? I don't know. I don't know how you guys feel about it. So is that what we have to push for, this road of mutual destruction? Because at the end of the day, I am not sure if ABC is going to get rid of Whoopi. If they're going to sit her down, they're going to have golden handcuffs with her or whatever, or just like Terminator. I'm not sure. It depends. And there could be people behind the scenes besides letters that's written and me talking about it, been talking about it, other Fox News, other people talking about it on different TV shows. There could be other pressure behind the scenes that ultimately gets her kicked off. Sometimes they do suspend people and then ultimately decide to let them go. Sometimes the suspension is just temporary and they bring them back. Like CNN brought Tubin back after he pleasured himself on a Zoom call. Okay. They just had him suspended for a little bit, and then they decided that they needed his legal expertise, which isn't really that grand. But they brought him back. Maybe he knows where some dead bodies are also buried as well. I don't know why they decided to do what they decided to do. But if we're going to have grace with Whoopi, there was other people that they could have had grace with, especially ABC, especially Disney, on their with their networks, with their shows. But they definitely are very one-sided in their ideology. And the best I can tell you guys, I really do encourage you guys to look at other sort of options as well with your entertainment. And to not spend too much of your money and time on people who hate you, who despise you. So just consider that. But that is the show for today. I'm going to go ahead and end it. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure that you guys go to blacktnews.com, check out the content that I have on the website. If you do like what I do here, please consider supporting at blacktnews.com/donate, or there's a ticker tape kind of going across the screen that you can go to the paypal.me/blacktnews if you would like to do that. But you can go to blacktnews.com/donate and leave a donation, $25, $50, whatever you want to do. I appreciate it. Make sure you guys are following me on all my social media platforms. Thank you to everyone who does take the time to go follow me on all of them. My links are in the description, so you guys can follow me on Getter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook. All my handles are at Black Tea News, except for on Twitter. That one is at True Black Tea. You guys can check out different merchandise that I have in my store. And if you guys are interested in any of my books, if you go to the merchandise on blacktnews.com, there is a banner that has some my books on it, and if you click on that, it will take you to blacktnews.com. Again, I do have a new book that is available for pre-order right now, called Anubis, Princess of the Damned. That book is a vampire YA romance. So if you like that sort of thing, or you know someone who likes that sort of thing, you can gift these things as well, but you can pre-order right now for $2.99 on Kindle. And you can do that today, and that is a way to show support. And I would like, to get a good showing when it does go live. So if you would, want to boost those numbers, I appreciate you guys doing that. And you guys can also gift it to someone. Right now the pre-order is only available on Kindle for the paperback version, if that's the way you prefer to order a book. That is not available right now, won't be until February 14th, which is Valentine's Day. That's easy to remember. That's when the book drops on Valentine's Day. And if you are looking for a good Black History Month sort of fiction read, again, you guys can check out The Color of God's Eyes and the song On the Devil's Lips. If you like X-Men kind of powers, and can you imagine that, like in the Civil War era with people those sort of abilities, you will enjoy this book. And there's so many great things about it. I think I'll be talking about it a lot this month, actually, but I'll dive into some more little segments about it at some other time. So please check out that stuff as well. And on Saturday, I do have a really good guest for Let's TikTok About It at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. He is a Canadian conservative, so we will be talking about the convoys. We will be talking about Trudeau. We will be talking about COVID and mandates and lockdowns and all sorts of things. So keep that in mind. And last thing I do want to mention, I am preaching at my church on Friday. So if you are anywhere near the Michigan area and you would like to join us, I think I do have the address here. Yeah. That's the address of my church. So if anyone would like to hear me on Friday, I am preaching at 7:00. The service begins at 7:00, but I will be preaching. So you're more than welcome to come join us and hear a good word. So just wanted to throw that out there because some people, ask and interested what I do outside of just talking about the politics, and sometimes people like to meet you. So I want to throw that out there, that I'm there like every Friday, Sunday anyway, but you can hear me speak at church. So there you go. If you're interested, threw that out there. God bless you guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for, I see you guys in the chat. I see your comments. Thank you guys for being here, being live. Thank you to the people who watch it back later. And I'll see you guys tomorrow.